Hi everyone, thank you so much for joining in this lesson. Today we are looking at reading comprehension skills. We are also looking at reading strategies. At the end of my lesson, I'm going to give you something to practice with. And don't forget, after this lesson, go to the website. The link is in the description. There I've given you practice exercises. So just go there, go to comprehension straight and register. You need to register. It's free to register and you can start practicing online. So there are passages there that are going to test your comprehension standards or your comprehension skills. So after this lesson, go to the description and get that link and then go to the website where you're going to start practicing, and that will help you to get started with what you need. Okay, so reading strategies. Let's look at reading strategies. Now, when you read, you know that we read in order to understand, and people write in order to communicate. So writing is like speaking and reading is like listening. Okay, so reading comes generally with skills that you need to learn. Number one skill is skimming. Skimming. So what is the goal of skimming? Is just to get a general idea or a gist quickly. So you skim through, you read quickly to get an idea of what the passage is talking about or of what the paragraph is talking about. How? You can read the title, read the first and last paragraphs, and then the first sentence of each body paragraph. Okay, in the first paragraph you read it so that you understand where it's going. In the last paragraph you read so that you understand what has been discussed in the body. But for the main body, you read first and last sentences of each paragraph. And you move very quickly because remember, you're not reading to understand everything. All you need is an idea. You want to get an idea of the passage quickly. When do we use this skill, skimming? You need it if you want to do a quick overview or you just want to get the main idea. You just want to get the main idea. You use this skill. Okay. Let me give you an illustration. Read the short text below in 15 seconds. State the main idea in one sentence. So if you read this paragraph here, you can read it in 15 seconds and tell me what your main idea, what you think the main idea in this paragraph is. If you want, you can pause, but for me, I'm going to show you what I found. The sample answer, you could say it in a different way. You're actually allowed to say it in your own way. But for me, from that paragraph, I think that the breakfast club improved attendance and concentration. That's the main idea in that paragraph. So you did not read to understand everything. All you wanted was to skim through, get an idea. Let's look at another illustration here. Read the paragraph below in 25 seconds if you can, and state the main idea. You don't need to use a watch to see how much time you are spending. I just want you to start thinking about reading something fast. Even if you missed, to understand one word, you don't worry about that. You just go straight. And when you read, tell me what your answer is. Tell me what the main idea of that paragraph is. For me, my sample answer is that free student bus passes reduced lateness and improved daily routines at school. So that's what I thought was the main idea in that paragraph. Okay, let's move to the second skill. The second skill is called scanning. Scanning is when you are looking for specific fact or a keyword in the paragraph. And you see questions like in paragraph, so how much are the adults supposed to pay for the trip? Then you can just scan for how much and find that number which you are looking for. So in this case, you do not need to run through like we saw in the first skill. In this one, you are looking for specific information. So how do you read? Keep the question in mind and move your eyes down the page and stop when you see the target word, target number, or target phrase. So you just keep going until you see what you are looking for. You can use this skill when you need a date, a name, a figure, or even a definition. That's when we use that skill. Now, in terms of illustration, let's look at this illustration. What is the cost of entry? Remember, that's the question we have. And we said that for you to do scanning, you need to have the question in mind. So remember this, what is the cost of entry? If you read this, you will see the museum opens at 9, adult tickets cost $12, students pay $8 with identification. So the cost of entry for adults is $12. For students, it's $8. You are just looking for that specific information, specific figure, specific number, okay? And indeed, for me, what I thought was $12 for adults, $8 for students. Let's look at another illustration. What is the early bird registration for adults? Remember this, we are looking for the early bird registration for adults. So to do that, read the paragraph, and as you read the paragraph, look for early bird fee for adults. So let's read it. The Riverside Fun Run will be held on Saturday, 28th September. Standard 10-kilometer registration is $45 for adults and $30 for students. Early bird entries submitted by 10 September are $35 for adults and $25 for students. On the day, entries are $60 for all categories. Bib collection opens at 6:30 a.m. at the Oval, and the race starts at 8 a.m. Okay? So we have read that paragraph. The question is, what is the early bird registration for adults? Obviously, if you were scanning for that, you understand that it's $35 for adults. That's what scanning looks like. So scanning, you're just looking for specific information. And if you have done comprehension before, I know that you know questions like these, questions that will ask you to find specific information. So I need you to think about these things if every time that you are faced with comprehension. Okay, now let's look at the last skill that you need for you to pass your comprehension. It's called detailed reading. Others call it reading in depth. It's the same thing. You're just reading to understand everything, including what is not in the passage. So what is the goal of detailed reading? To understand ideas deeply and accurately. How do you do this? You read slowly, you mark keywords, you paraphrase complex sentences, you check links between ideas, how ideas connected, how is the flow of this passage? You ask yourself those questions and you answer those questions. That's how you go. So when do we use detailed reading? When answering inference, tone, or structure questions, and when quoting evidence. Now, let me explain this because this is very important. Have you ever looked at a past exam paper and you see a question like, in paragraph, so the author said blah, 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 blah. What did he mean, right? Questions like that, they require you to have detailed reading in order to understand what is implied and what is not stated directly. How about questions like, what is the a question like, what can one conclude from what the author said, right? What can one conclude from what the author said? Meaning that you have to infer the meaning. That's why you're looking for inference and even tone. You need to look at a passage and read it in detail. Let's look at an illustration. Although the council approved the park upgrade, several members expressed concern about maintenance costs. Now, the question is, what is the writer's attitude in this one? In short, what is the attitude? What is the writer trying to push forward to the reader? And that question requires that you read between lines and that you understand. So when you read that short passage, my answer was that generally he was supportive of the upgrade, but he was concerned about the future costs, So himself as a writer, he welcomed that upgrade, but he was just concerned about the future costs. Let's look at another one. This one is a bit long, but let's read it and see how it can help us to illustrate the point of detailed reading. After a 6-month trial of extended library hours, the council voted to make the change permanent. Evening use increased, particularly among shift workers and Year 12 students, and borrowing of stud guides nearly doubled. However, the report notes that later closing times stretched a small staff, led to more security call-outs, and pushed electricity costs beyond forecasts. The writer welcomes the broader access and says the library now feels like a civic lounge room, but urges the council to set aside funds for extra staffing and to review security because expanding the model to smaller branches, or before expanding the model to smaller branches. So if you read this, maybe read it the second time, read it the third time, and answer the question about the writer's attitude. What do you think is the writer's attitude? I came up with my own answer, which is generally the writer was very positive about extended hours because it improved access, but he was also cautious because it meant that the library had to have extra staffing and security funding before wider rollout. So that's what I thought about that one. So what we have just done is to look at the 3 skills that you need to know. Now, before I say goodbye, let me recap. Number 1, you need to know how to use your skimming skill. Skimming is where you just read to get an idea of the passage. Scanning is when you are looking for specific information, which could be figures, numbers, names, years, dates, and things like that, including definitions. Lastly, we looked at detailed reading, which means that you are reading to understand beyond what is given. You are reading to understand between lines. And for you to pass your comprehension of the comprehension part of the exam, you need to answer, or you need to have all these 3 skills, because together they help you answer the different types of questions that you may be faced with in the exam. Now, before I let you go, allow me to remind you that if you want to test yourself with a skill on my website, just click the link and go to the website. There is a course for comprehension where I'm teaching the same lessons that I'm giving on YouTube there on that course, but not so much for the courses. I just want you to practice, and I want you to see how you can apply these skills on the website. And thank you so much for giving me support. I really appreciate. I'll see you in the next lesson. Thank you and bye.